said, it's basically, I mean, this the JVP had this kind of tendency in the 1970s because they had this Indian expansionism. I mean, one of the 5 classes they conducted to the new recruits was this Indian expansionism, and that actually they got from Comrade Shanmugadasan of the Ceylon Communist Party. Because it's basically, I mean, the Indian expansionism, it came from the Maoist kind of explanation, what the India has an agenda in the region, that they are expanding their influence to the other countries. And this was taken by the JVP in the 70s, and they twisted this idea, and they basically said the Indian expansionism is a real thing, and the 5th column of Indian expansionism in Ceylon, in Sri Lanka, is actually the plantation workers. They are the ones who will function as the 5th column of the Indian expansionism. So this is a kind of, they put a racist twist to this original idea, which they borrowed from the Ceylon Communist Party, which didn't have any kind of racist connotation, and they twisted it to fit to the opinion of the Sinhalese, to fit to the opinions of the anti-Tamil, anti-plantation worker sentiments. But actually, since then, the JP has come a long way. And despite all these things, they had, I mean, at the moment, for example, they have a considerable presence in the plantations as well, as far as I know. But at the same time, it has, I have to say, despite having Tamil members, it does not mean the JP has radically break away from their racist past. They do, I mean, like even the United National Party, which actually carried out most of the massacres and pogroms in the 80s, they also have Tamil members, and they also get Tamil votes. But it doesn't mean their agenda is basically representing the interest of the entire population in the country, regardless of which ethnic community they belong to. So in that sense, I think the JVP, especially during the period started from 1995, since the JVP came into open politics after the JVP was banned in 1983, they were underground, and then there was an uprising between 1987 and 1989, and then the leadership of the JVP was almost killed. And then there was another couple of years they functioned underground after the massacres. And in 1994, when the UNP was forced to conduct elections after 17 years, JVP came into open politics. And since 1994 August, JVP has been in the open politics. And since 1994, JVP has drifted more and more to the right, to the extent that they were the most enthusiastic cheerleader for the war waged against the Tamil people by Rajapakshas. In their own admission, they have said that we did a mistake by supporting the war unconditionally, kind of thing. And they have, I mean, the leader of the JVP have admitted, for example, when the Rajapaksa government, initially the JVP said the Rajapaksa was reluctant to wage the war, not because he was feeling something good about the Tamil people, but because he was not sure whether such a war effort could achieve victory. So Rajapaksa was reluctant because he didn't know what will happen if a war is going to be started. And the JVP, according to JVP's account, they say when the Rajapaksa was reluctant, it was we who pushed him to the war. We who actually, in their own words, they said we who dragged him to the war like a dog taken to have a bath. It was like dog taking for a bath, we took him to the war. And they said it in a positive way, saying that we actually deserve the credit for winning the war because it was we who convinced him that we should wage war. Now, this was said at the end of the war by the JVP leader, Soman Shamara Singh. And later, the current leader of the JVP said in March and April, when there were kind of reluctance because of the different kind of pressures, whether the government should use the heavy weapons. against the remaining population in the areas administered by the Tigers. According to JVP's leader, he said, we self-critically have admit that we actually insist the heavy weapons should be used. So he openly said it, and we actually reported it, that he said during an interview on the BBC Sinhala service, he said it was we who advocated when the government was reluctant to use the heavy weapons. It was we who advocated the government in April 2009 to use heavy weapons against the remaining population. He didn't say against the remaining population, but he said use the heavy weapons. But we all know that is against the remaining population. So JVP's, I mean, at the core of the JVP's political ideology, racism plays a huge role. They have not taken clear positions against the crimes committed against the Tamils or the Muslims. They want Tamils and Muslims to support them, and they want to represent them as the party that represents the interest of the Sinhalese and the Tamils and the Muslims. But that's all rhetoric. So because of that, I think JVP has not radically break away from their racist past. And actually, they have even gone further compared to the 71 generation. The later generations, including myself, because I come from the JVP background in the 80s, and I belong to the second generation of the JVPs who rose against the government between 1987 and 1989. I belong to that generation. And including my generation, JVP has drifted towards the right compared to its left-wing origins. And for